One of the most fundamentally American rights is the right to, in criminal matters, have the right to a trial of a jury of one's peers. Now, I've pondered this before. What is a jury of one's peers? I have thought about that. And in my opinion, for me, a jury of my peers would be 12. 12 is the number where I come from of a jury. I understand some places it's 7, some places it's 9. In California, where I come from, it's 12. And you get 12 jurors. I don't know what it is here. Sorry. And I think for me, a jury of my peers would be 12 elected officials from California. A jury of Donald Trump's peers, I would think, would be 12 presidents and prime ministers from foreign nations. That would be his peers. For a black person, at least 3 or 4 African Americans. And then I would say if there are any new district attorneys coming in and they have to seat a jury, I would recommend pulling 3 folks from that person's race in, as well as 9 people who all prayed differently. And the different ways of praying that encompass those 9 types that we want all different. I would want all different folks that pray all different ways on a jury. And I've put them into boxes. Like, for example, when Trent Lott's dad prayed, he would only pray to thank God. That was all he'd pray. Trent Lott's dad was an alcoholic, and alcohol made him do really bad things, and he would only pray in thanks. Another way to pray is like Tanya Bowman. She prays intercessory prayer. They at Claremont Christian Fellowship they had a whole series they bring in people on intercessory prayer. And it's where you pray that, Lord, I pray on this other person's behalf. And then there's ways like Jesus prayed. Jesus prayed about forgiveness and the forgiveness of sins, and spoke to God as if he were the Father that and said, have mercy on them. Then there are folks who pray prostrate, like a Muslim, and they are bowed before Mecca when they pray in complete humility. And then there are folks who pray like Nanny, that Jesus is the only spirit of another world that we converse with. Jesus, not even his Virgin Mother Mary. No, praying to saints or anyone except Jesus. That's the only person we pray to who is passed. It's Jesus. Somebody prays like Nanny. So let's see. So you have someone who prays like Trent Lott's dad in gratefulness, someone who prays like Tanya at the Claremont Christian Fellowship in intercessory and praying that God would protect and help another person and that you would stand before God for them. And another person who prays like Jesus in forgiveness of sins. And then someone else who prays like a prostate and on their, like, bowed when they pray. Very humble. And then there are people who pray like chanting, people like Gil or the fellow Nettie, and they chant and they say something that has been passed down for a long time, and they just have an intent, and then they chant on it and like that. So I would want a jury with people who pray in all those ways, one of each. 9 different ways to pray, or 7, I don't know how many I just named off, but that each jury should have at least 3 or 4 persons of that person's ethnicity. And it should be comprised, if I were a district attorney, I would want the jury, or a public defender, I would want the jury sat of people who pray differently and all take different perspectives on prayer, and do jury selection based on prayer type. Oh, and then there's Sean. He prays by taking care of his family and providing for them. And that's a great way to pray. Mike prays in thankfulness and the gratitude and all what he's happy for, and all the folks that he met and his thanks God for. I think that's 9 ways to pray. See a jury like that. That would be great. Someone who prays by providing for their family, someone who prays in gratitude, and someone who prays in intercessory, and someone who prays prostate, and someone who prays forgiveness, and someone who prays Jesus. Just Jesus. That's how, I'm not sure how many is that. Okay, so if they pray like Lot's dad, the senator, his dad, would only pray in gratitude, and someone who prays like Tanya as an intercessory on behalf of someone else trying to stand before God and help spare this person, and someone who prays like Jesus about forgiveness. Forgiveness is the most important thing. And someone who prays by providing for their family and making sure they're taken care of. And someone who prays, did I say the word about that? Very humble when they pray. Very, very humble. I think a jury ought to have people who pray differently on it, and 3 or 4 folk of the race of the defendant. And I think that would be a good way to make up a jury. A jury of one's peers is a hallmark difference in the United States. They don't have the right to an accusatory court, and a jury of one's peers in Mexico or China. It's a very uniquely American thing that I think is paramount. A jury of one's peers. For mine, like I said, I would think it would be 12 people, 12 elected officials in California, 12 presidents and prime ministers, and for a black person, 3 or 4 blacks. But I would also, if I were seating a jury, I would want them seated based on a variety of ways that they pray. Ask them, how do you pray? What do you pray about? And put them in schools and make sure each jury has one from each of those schools. Someone who just prays in gratitude, someone who just prays, or mainly prays in gratitude, someone who prays forgiveness, someone who prays intercessory, someone who prays by providing for the family, someone who prays by chanting, someone who prays prostate. Those are 7 ways of praying that I think are all good. And if I had a jury, I'd hope I'd have people who pray differently, not all the same. And that's okay. And that would be a good makeup for a jury. And I'm really glad the right to a jury of one's peers in the United States. But instead of me asking for 12 elected officials from California, I said I just want people who pray 7 different ways so that it's fairest on the defendant. I've posted a lot of stuff about how many folks in this country find themselves incarcerated. Now, California has been able to let a lot of folks out of prison and do a realignment program that has not resulted in increased crime. There's some theft and stuff, but violent crime is down, property damage, destruction is down, except for the fires. But I really would hope it, like if I were district attorney here. Now I like Hoffmeister, I think he might be representing a friend of mine in a custody battle in Oklahoma, so I have no qualms with him. I don't know, maybe he's not. Maybe he's after the guy. I don't know. But if I were district attorney, the first jury I try and get 8 people, 12 people, whatever is called for in Kansas, and see if we can talk to them about their prayers and the way they pray, and make sure everyone has a different way that they talk with God so that it's fair and that that person has at least one peer on that jury. Hopefully so they don't have to do anything. That would be the most favorable composition.